What we're going to do today is use Frame Motion and Chakra to create this really cool animated list view. So if I add someone here, we'll see how the objects move down as that one enters, and if I remove, we'll see how they all move up. And we can see that we can sort by email, sort by name, and objects adjust accordingly. So let's get started. So to get started, let's go to the Chakra UI website. Then we want to navigate to the guides and look for the Create React app. We're going to use Create React app to create our project with a Chakra UI template. You can either use the regular one or the TypeScript one. I'm going to go for the TypeScript one for this example. Then if we navigate to our Visual Studio Code, open up a new terminal, and we can navigate to the directory we want to create the project in. So paste that command, and we can then rename the project to whatever we want. I'm going to go with Motion List for this example, and we press enter. That will take a few minutes, so we'll come back when that's done. So that's finished, and I've navigated to the folder we just created. And the Chakra template has gave us most of the libraries we need, including Chakra obviously and Motion Framer, but I'm also going to npm install React hook form, which I'm going to use to handle our form submission when updating the state. So now that that's done, we can code our dot to open this folder in VS Code. Then what I'm going to do is remove some of the template files we've been given because we won't be using them in this example. So I'm going to remove the test utilities, the service worker, the vitals, environment, logos, color switch mode, and the app test file. So we can delete all of these, and then if we open our app one, we can remove all these imports, and we can remove everything that's rendered inside the app apart from the Chakra provider. Let's go ahead and save that. And then we can open the index file and remove this. Then we're pretty much ready to start. So we can then npm start to get the application going. Let's start by creating a form input. So if we type flex, we can import a flex container from Chakra, and all this is a div with the display property set to flex. And then inside there we want two inputs because we are going to have the name and the email of the person we are displaying. So the placeholder for this can be name, then we can go ahead and copy the placeholder and paste it in here, and email. The type of this is going to be email. Then we also want a submit button, so I'm going to import the button component from Chakra, and this will be submit. The type will be submit to, and we can set this color scheme to, let's go for a teal color. Need to import the input. Then on our flex container, we can set the padding to 6, and we will set the width of our button to 100%. Then we can also copy this, and we'll add a remove button too. Remove the type being submit, and we'll make this right. So we see that's rendered, but we obviously want that to be stacked on top of each other. So if we go back here, we can wrap our inputs and buttons inside something called a V-stack, which is a vertical stack. And what this does is, I need to import that. What this does is stacks our items with a padding that we can specify. So, sorry, with a spacing that we can specify. So I'm going to specify a spacing of 2, see what that looks like. Maybe a little bit more. Let's go 4. Then we can also make the width of this a bit bigger. Let's give it a width of 300 pixels. And that looks perfect. Okay, so from here we can work on our state. So I'm going to change this into a functional component, and we will return this. So for our state, we're going to have a array containing our people, and we're going to set people and use state. So since I'm using TypeScript, I will be using a person model, which I'm going to create now, and it will have a default state of an empty array. So inside our src folder, I'm going to create a new folder and call it model, then a new file, and we can call this person.tx. Then inside here I can export interface, which is going to be our person model. And inside this model, it's pretty simple. We're just going to have a name, which is a string, and a email, which is also a string. So we can save that and then go back to our app and import it. So person model, and we also need to import use state from React. So this will be a array of persons. So we can save that. Then we're going to need 2 functions. One function to add people to the array and one function to remove people. So const add people. This is going to take a person to add variable object, which will be of the type person model. And we are going to have another function called remove people, which we're just going to remove the first element in the array for this example. So we won't need any primers on this one. So to add people, for this to work with framer motion, we're going to need a unique identifier for the people. So we're going to make that the email for this example, but obviously if you're using more complex data, you'd probably use the ID. So before we add people, we want to check if people.sum person, does this person have the email equal to person to add.email. Then we want to make that not. So what this does is it checks if an email exists within this data set. If it doesn't, then we're going to add that person to our array. So let's make a temp copy of the array. So const temp people equals spread operator people. Then we can temp people dot. I'm actually going to shift to add this to the front of the array because it'll look better for that animation. So person to add goes in here and close that, and then to remove people we can copy this. Then what we're just looking to do is shift the first element off the array. So we can then add an onClick listener for the remove, and we can also add a onClick for the add. Actually, we won't need to do that because we'll add the handler onto our form, which we can do now. So for the form, all we need is a basic HTML form element which we will wrap our stack in. So if we take that, take this and put it down here, then what we need to do is import our use form handler from React hook form. So from this, we're going to have const handle submit. We need register, and we will also need a reset, which will equal the use form. So we've now got our functions from the React hook form. So on our form element, we can do onSubmit, which will equal our handle submit, and inside that we want to pass our add people function. For our input elements, we need to register them in React hook form. So to do that, all we need is curly brackets, and then you want the spread operator, register, and then the name of the input. So for name, we're going to have name, and then for email, we will have email in here. So we can save that. Then, sorry, I've forgotten these functions. We need to obviously set the people to our temp people once we're done. So we can copy this down. And for the reset, we want to reset our form once we've added the person, so we can save that. Now let's just console log people to check that's working. Then if we go in here, open up our console and try to add someone. So I'm going to add Sammy at sammy.com. So we can add that, and we can see that that's been added in here. Let's try to add something else. So let's add John at gmail.com. So what we're going to do now is render our list of people. So we're going to want another vertical stack. We can set the width of this to, let's go 400 pixels, and we will have the spacing, let's go slightly wider for this, so let's go 6 pixels. And inside here, we want to take our people state, map person, which is going to return eventually it's going to return a person card, but for now, let's just render a heading element with our person's name inside, just to check that's working. Person.name. You can save that and go back here. We see that's printing out there. However, we want to move our vertical stack inside this flex element, like that, to have it on the side. So that's perfect. So we can go ahead and make our card element now. So let's create a new folder, and we call it components. And inside here, we are going to have a person card, .txt file, and we will need to import React from React, and then we can export const our person card. Now the person card is going to take a person object, which will be of type person model, which we will need to import. So if I go up here, import person model from the model, and save that, then we can return a flex box again. And within that flex box, we are going to have a avatar. We are going to have let's just make that a bit shorter. We have an avatar. We are going to have a box, which is going to contain our heading, and it's also going to contain some text, which will be the email address. Now we need to import all of these from Chakra. Import all. Text didn't get imported, so we can import that manually. So within these two fields, what we can do is print out our person's email. No, sorry, in the heading we want to print out the person's name, and within the text we want to print out their email. So to style this box, we can give it a top and bottom padding of 3 and a left and right padding of 4. We'll give it some border radius, make that medium, and we can give it a background color of, let's go for a teal. I like teal color. So, oh, I've not changed it. So in our app, we need to import the person's card. Then scroll in here and we can replace this heading with our person's card. And then we need to pass it the person. So that should hopefully be rendered. Okay, see that rendered there. Then we probably want to reduce the size of the heading to make it a bit more nicer. So let's go font size equals 18. And we can give it a color. Let's go for a dark teal color. And we'll give the text a slightly lighter teal color. Let's go 700. Then we want to make the width of our container full. So look like that. Then we can probably want to space the input from here, so we can add some margin. If we go back to our app file, we can add some margin to the right. Let's give it 12, which will move them along nicely. Then on our person's card again, we want to add, I'm going to wrap the box element and the avatar element inside a horizontal stack, just so we can space them out nicely. And I will give the horizontal stack a spacing of 3, which just moved the text away slightly. I'll also give a border left of 2 pixels, and I'll give it a border color which can be a teal color. How does that look? Okay, so that's not looking too bad. Then let's just check we can still add people. So let's add Scott@gmail.com. Okay, so we can see that's adding and removing fine. What I'm going to do now is define a default state. So if we go back to our motion list, we can go up here and just define a constant, which is going to be our default state, which is going to be an array with an object with a name. The name can be Sammy, and an email, which can be sammy@gmail.com. So we can then copy this object, paste it 3 or 4 times. Let's go 5. Then change these names. Ryan, Adam, Daniel, Ryan, and John. Then on our default state, we can pass that to our useState function, which should hopefully render these. So we've got them that we can use whenever we refresh the page. So at the moment when we remove an item, the list count just instantly jumps up, and when we add an item, for example, Zach, we add this item, the list just instantly jumps down. So to get motion in this, what we need to do is go to the person's card file. Then within this file, we need to use something called motion from Framer Motion. So if you ever used Framer Motion without Chakra, you would just use something called a motion div, which would look something like this. But obviously we're using Chakra elements for this, so how do we get the props we need from the motion div and the Chakra props? It's pretty simple. So we just define a constant. We'll call this constant motion flex. Then we can use that motion function that we just imported and pass it our flex container. Then we can change this flex to be the motion flex, and that will give us access to the flex props and the motion container props. And then we can define an initial prop, which will be the initial state of the component when the component is about to mount. So what I can do is set the opacity to 0 and the scale to 0, and then we need to define an animate, which is what the component will animate to. So if I set the opacity back at 1 and the scale back at 1 and save that, our component should start on 0 capacity and a 0 scale and then animate to its regular capacity and regular scale. So we need to add animate presence, which is from frame or motion, which will let us animate the presence of our person's card. Our person's card also needs a unique identifier set, so in this case we're going to use our person's email. Then the problem we have now is whenever our people state updates, all these cards are going to get re-rendered. So what we need to do to prevent that is go to person's cards and wrap our component in the memo function. So what the memo function does is it takes our component as the first argument and a function as the second argument. The function has the parameters next and previous, and what we can do is compare our next person to our previous person, and we can import that from React, so memo. So this is checking that our next person equals our previous person, so the component will only re-render if the person is changed and it won't re-render otherwise. I'm also going to add required props to our inputs to stop blank submissions, and if we go to our application, if I add Zach is the only one that gets animated, which is pretty cool. So I'll show you that again. Let's go Lily at gmail.com. Spell that Lily again. And then when we remove, we'll notice that our cards just disappear. So we need to add a exit animation to our person's card. So it will animate from the animate to the exit. So we want to pretty much just set the exit the same as the initial value. So we can just copy and paste that, then save. And then if we reload the page, and we can see when we remove it, the card now scales and disappears, which is pretty cool. So the one thing left we've got to do now is, if I refresh the page, when we remove something, we'll notice that our remaining state just kind of jumps up. It isn't like smoothly moving up. So to fix that, what we need to do is go back to our code, and we want to add a layout prop to our motion flex container. So what this layout prop does is, then inside the animate presence that has this layout prop will be notified when an object with this layout prop changes, so it needs to adjust its position. So I'll show that how that works in here. So if I add Zach again, we'll see when he's added, our remaining list gets moved down slowly. So if I remove, you'll see it gets moved up slowly. So another cool thing we can do is we could add a sort by name function, which is going to take a copy of the state. Then it can sort the state. We're going to have person A and person B, which will then person A email dot local compare, and then we need to pass it person B. Say person B dot email, sorry. Oh, sort by name. So let's just change this to email. And then we need to set the state to type people again. Then just while we're here, we can copy this and do one for the name too. So name, and we will change these to name 2. Then we can add 2 more buttons. Let's copy this one. change the color schemes to an orange. And for this one, it's going to sort by name. This one will sort by email and pass it the respective functions, sort by email and sort by name. So if I refresh the page, when I click sort by name, we'll notice Adam will come to the top and Daniel and Sammy will move down. So if I click this here, you'll see how it all swaps smoothly rather than just jumping about the page. It's pretty cool. So that's Zach. And then sort by name, Zach will dip down to the bottom. Pretty nice. I will post this code on my GitHub if anyone wants to fork it or pull it and have a go. Thanks for watching.